I have talked about it before that I was trained in information warfare and information operations by the former director of the Information Warfare Operations Center for the Air Force. And part of information operations is psychological operations. It's kind of affecting the psychology of people that are your enemies, and it can be changing their opinions. For example, right now I'm going to put on these glasses, and then everyone's going to think I'm smarter. So right now, all y'all know one thing. This guy's smart. Well, maybe you don't know know that I'm smart because I just used the word y'all. Y'all makes me sound dumb. But generally, I am now smart because I'm wearing glasses. I affected your psychology. There are a lot of ways to affect people's psychology. But information warfare, a lot of the time, has to do with hacking people. So when we talk about me hacking you, what does that mean I can do? I can change what you see on your computer. So when you try to access certain information, suddenly you're accessing the information that I'm telling you. And then suddenly you're angry because I've convinced you of something that's not true, or I've convinced you of something that is true. So sending out, if you've ever heard of militaries dropping leaflets, like right now, South Korea, all the time, they want to go to North Korea and drop leaflets to their population, and North Korea gets really angry about it, right? That's a psychological operation. They're telling these people, you don't have to trust your government because you should trust us, or they'll tell them whatever they're saying, which tends to be anti-North Korean government. They're talking about how nice their government is. So information warfare weapons tend to be things related to disrupting communications. And so but also they tend to be hacking tools. So this list right here, those are things you might not know what they are unless you're a security person. Security people know that most of those are for hacking or for disrupting communications. So what is a valid target? Here, an example is given of Slobodan Milosevic being attacked by Bill Clinton, and what he did is he used his computer hackers at the CIA to attack foreign bank accounts and sabotage, and they did a sabotage campaign to erode his public support. He, going to the next paragraph, the finding would permit the CIA to train ethnic Albanian rebels in Kosovo in the art of sabotage, including such tricks as cutting telephone lines, fouling gasoline reserves, and pilfering food supplies, the magazine said. The CIA also was instructed to wage a cyber war against Milosevic using computer hackers to tap into Yugoslav presidents' foreign bank accounts. So there are a lot of ways to do information warfare. And a lot of the time it involves bombing things. Like if war breaks out, people are going to bomb our communication centers so that we can't communicate. Because if we can't communicate, then we can't talk about what we're doing with our war. Another example is during the Civil War. The South, I'm pretty sure, it was probably the North also, always tried to disrupt communications by blowing up these lines of communication so that people couldn't communicate through telegraphs. And usually those telegraphs went along railroad lines because it would be easier to fix them because they don't want them going off way off in the middle of the forest. So people would blow up the communication lines so that they couldn't communicate. Information warfare in this example is specifically talking about, or the definition of it is talking about affecting an adversary's information-based processes, information systems, and computer-based networks while defending one's own information-based processes, and information systems. That was according to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So when we're talking about information warfare, a lot of the time it has to do with blowing stuff up. Or it has to do with disrupting communications in a wartime scenario. But doing psychological operations can be just as powerful. So when we look at the cornerstones of information warfare, psychological operations aren't at the top, they're towards the bottom. But the top is hack people and get access to their information and ruin their ability to access your information and change their information. But then psychological operations can be very powerful because they can change people's opinion. So what comprises information warfare? PSYOPs, electronic warfare, military deception, physical destruction, security measures, and information attacks. I'm not going to go into everything. Y'all can pause this video and look at it because I wanted to get to information operations. So here my former professor has a bunch of quotes. He has Sun Tzu right here, which says, "For to win 100 victories in 100 battles is not the pinnacles of skill. To subdue the enemy without fighting is the pinnacle of skill." And then there's this hacker named Jericho. "True hackers don't give up. They explore every possible way into a network, not just the well-known ones." The Gilmore Commission says, "The most likely perpetrators of cyber attacks on critical infrastructures are terrorists or criminal groups rather than nation states." Yeah, maybe I agree with that. I think it's pretty difficult to get into to hack critical infrastructure nowadays. That's why when I heard about this critical infrastructure hack recently, which is someone hacked the water supply of this place in Florida, my automatic reaction was, I'll bet it was an insider. I doubt it was someone from the outside, but if it was someone from the outside, their security is not very good. This is from Fred Thompson. He says, "Cyberspace is the battlefield of tomorrow. Instead of confronting us head-to-head on the traditional battlefield, adversaries will confront the U.S. at its point of least resistance, our information infrastructure." And then Benjamin Franklin says, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. So what are the forms of I.O.? C2, which is command and control warfare, which is the military strategy that implements information warfare on the battlefield and integrates physical destruction. Its objective is to decapitate the enemy's command structure from its body of command forces. Okay, I actually didn't know that. Intelligence-based warfare. IBW occurs when intelligence is fed directly into operations, notably targeting and battle damage assessment, rather than used as an input for overall command and control. IBW results directly in the application of steel to target, rather than corrupted bytes. Okay, so let's get on to electronic warfare. The first two forms of IW discussed deal with attacks either on systems or by systems. The third form is EW, or operational techniques, radioelectronic and cryptographic, thus war in the realm of communications. EW attempts to degrade the physical basis for transferring information, while cryptographic warfare works between bits and bytes. Psychological warfare, which is what I always say that I do, as used here, encompasses the use of information against the mind rather than against computer support. There are four categories of PSYOPs. Operations against the national will, so against an entire country, operations against opposing commanders, operations against troops, and a category much respected abroad, cultural conflict. Hacker warfare. This guy, Win Schwartel, among others, uses the term information warfare to refer almost exclusively to attacks on computer networks. In contrast to physical combat, these attacks are specific to properties of the particular system because the attacks exploit known whole... Okay, I'm not going to go into that because that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about PSYOPs. So, economic information warfare. What is my specialty? Economic information warfare. So, the marriage of information warfare and economic warfare can take two forms: information blockade and information imperialism. The effectiveness of an information blockade presumes an era in which the well-being of societies will be affected by information flows as they are today by flows of material supplies. Nations would strangle others' access to external data. To believe in information imperialism means believing in modern-day economic imperialism. Thus, trade is war. Nations struggle with one another to dominate strategic economic industries. Nations specialize in certain industries. The good industries command high wages and usually feature high growth rates. They tend to be knowledge intensive. The constant exchange of information, in particular early access to interesting technical questions and information resources, provides one an edge in coming up with interesting solutions. So, one thing I'd like to mention about this is I say things that get me blocked in certain countries. There are some countries that are afraid, or there are certain leaders that are very top down. They're very kind of dictatorial. They're kind of like dictators, even though they don't live in fascist countries. And when you attack a certain leader, then everyone doesn't want you to be able to talk to their people anymore. And once you do that, then it cuts off certain people from knowing what you're doing. And when you cut off certain populations from knowing, then they can't adjust to the economic things that I do. Like when I attacked Bitcoin years ago, I brutally attacked Bitcoin. Bitcoin completely plummeted. I attacked it over Facebook. I said that Bitcoin was the greatest threat to American national security in history. And then some people didn't know I was saying that, and some people did. And next thing you know, it plummeted, and guess who didn't know it was plummeting? People that weren't privy to information about me while other people were. All right, so cyber warfare. I'm not gonna go into that. So trying to figure out where to go next. I'm skipping a lot of slides here. So next, this goes into what is critical infrastructure, and I'm not going to really talk about that. And it talks about who might attack critical infrastructure, and then we get to PSYOPs, which is more fun. So PSYOPs and perception management. Perception management involves information operations that aim to affect the perception of others in order to influence their emotions, reasoning, decisions, and ultimately actions. PSYOPs aim to influence behavior by affecting the human psyche through fear, desire, logic, and other mental factors. A lot of the time it has to do with money, because if our currency's worth nothing, what happens? We're screwed. We're completely screwed. And so a lot of the things I do have to do with protecting American financial interests. I'm not talking about individual Americans. I'm talking about America's financial interests as a whole. So perception management, any medium can be exploited. So you can use face-to-face communications. You can use print, just like I just sent this mail out. You can use telecommunications, broadcast, and computer networks. So you can communicate by email and through all different techniques. You can use Reddit. So perception management often is taken to mean media manipulation. So the United States government's constantly trying to manipulate the media to have their news cycles saying what they want them to say, and so everyone does information warfare. Some people do it for the greater good, and some people do it for their political party. So perception management isn't just a military function. Soft war. So that, according to this guy, Chuck DeCaro, soft war is the hostile use of global television to shape another nation's will by changing its vision of reality. Global television offers parties a cheap, accurate, real-time politico-military intelligence service that simultaneously acts as an extremely potent instrument to affect adversely and directly the U.S. domestic body politic. So, what I've said in the past, one of the most powerful things that the United States has going for it is that everyone watches our TV. Everyone in the world can watch Rachel Ray or Dr. Phil or our movies, and our movies say something about the American psyche, which is the worst thing ever is to kill someone. There's nothing worse that you can ever do. The act of killing someone is the most difficult thing ever. All superheroes don't use guns. If you use a gun, then you're an idiot, because real intelligence people would never shoot someone. They will karate chop you. And they can fight a gun with their fists. And I mean, really, that is what our media says, and I think it's a good thing, because we're instilling certain values that make our society nonviolent, and I agree with them. So he used an example of a Haitian dictator using global TV as the poor man's information warfare, judged the likely U.S. reaction in the wake of revulsion at the videotape of Rangers being killed and mutilated in Somalia. He optimized his political military moves to forestall U.S. intervention by having a handful of rabble assemble on a pier, mug angrily on cue for global TV while waving English-language placards. He thus turned away a U.S. warship on a UN mission with nothing more than the video of an alleged mob that generated the perception of imminent bloodshed, projected and amplified by TV. The perception was worsened by video coverage of the warship sailing away. So this guy like puts on TV that if you come here, everyone's angry at you and you're going to get killed. And next thing you know, we got afraid. And then he used our warship sailing away to help him politically. So that's an example of a lie that is put out through the media that changes people's opinions so that it changes their behavior. Because what's the goal of information warfare? It's to change people's behavior. I'm not going to go into this LA riot example he uses. Here he talks about the nature of TV. And he says, television, by its nature, is an effective, insidious, and dangerous medium for delivery of propaganda. Television is a cool medium that defines events by the viewer's perception of images and sounds rather than of reality. So, in television, I just saw recently, someone got mad about having a TV show on, that there was this TV show on HBO where they were doing, like, cutting open cats, an animal, a cat. And that I'm sure that they were using this cat's organs to look like it was a human's organs. And part of television is taking something that is not and making it look like it is. Like I put myself on a stage in one of my music videos where I'm rocking out, but the stage was like this big. It's a tiny little stage, but it looks like I was on a big stage. And then I even put a crowd in the situation. So he gives an example of the Nixon-Kennedy debate where Kennedy looks so good because he's young, and I'm pretty sure he wore makeup. Pretty much everyone on television wears makeup. Politicians wear makeup all the time. I'm not wearing makeup right now because that's life, because I don't know how to do makeup. But what I'm saying is perception's everything when it's on the screen, and it's not true. So he talks about like naming things, like naming Antifa as terrorists. That's what Donald Trump did. He said, these people are terrorists. And then everyone goes, okay, everyone that's Antifa is a terrorist. Everyone that's against the government behaving in fascist ways is terrorists. So he gives the examples of pro-choice versus pro-life. Donald Trump is a master, or was a master at naming things. That was his best, like, what Crazy Nancy Pelosi, right? And who's the liar? Probably Ted Cruz, right? Lying Ted. I can't remember what Ted Cruz's name. Sleepy Joe Biden. Let's face it. Does Joe Biden put you to sleep? He does.